Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Our top story, the new tariffs on Chinese imports taking effect on August 1st. U.S. officials say the tariffs address China's unfair trade practices and protect the U.S. economy. The Chinese regime taking measures against 12 U.S. companies and their senior executives. Find out what they are claiming and why. The unexplained death of a man charged with spying for China. A UK citizen found the former Royal Marine's dead body in a park near London just weeks after he was granted bail. And is lethal aid being handed to Russia? Britain's defense minister points the finger at China, alleging the country is supplying aid for Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Massive tax hikes on China are coming. Starting August 1st, the U.S. will lay steep tariff increases on an array of Chinese imports, including electric vehicles, solar cells, and ship-to-shore cranes. That's according to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative on Wednesday. The August tariff upgrade hits Chinese electric vehicles the hardest, with tariffs jumping from 25% to 100%. Tariffs on solar cells are doubling for a new total of 50%. The White House is also imposing a new 50% tariffs on Chinese syringes and needles. That follows an FDA warning about their poor quality, including leaks and breakage of some Chinese syringes. Chinese steel, aluminum products, and cranes will also face a new 25% tariff. U.S. trade officials explain that the tariffs are designed to tackle China's unfair trade practices and protect the U.S. economy. The officials accused Beijing of aggressive cyber intrusions and intellectual property theft that harms national security. President Biden will keep the tariffs issued by former President Trump while ratcheting up others. Biden also ordered tariff increases on certain other products to take effect over the next 2 years. Those imports include semiconductors, lithium-ion non-EV batteries, natural graphite, and surgical gloves. The increases for 2025 and 2026 will be effective January 1st of the corresponding year. Beijing condemned the tariff hikes last week after the White House announced them, and soon launched a tit-for-tat anti-dumping probe on certain goods from the U.S. and its allies. The Chinese regime is sanctioning 12 companies involved in the U.S. military industry and their senior executives. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said the companies include units of Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and General Dynamics. The measures include freezing the U.S. company's assets in China and banning senior executives from entering the country. Beijing said the actions are in response to Washington's continued weapons sales to Taiwan and U.S. sanctions. Those U.S. sanctions target Chinese companies that Washington says are involved with Russia. The communist regime claims its position on the Ukraine war is impartial, but the West says China is supporting Russia's invasion of Ukraine. China could be hiking tariffs on cars as it faces sharply higher U.S. auto import duties. A government-affiliated auto research group told a local newspaper that China should raise tariffs on large gasoline-powered cars to 25%. Right now, the tariff is 15%. A higher duty for cars with larger engines would mostly impact German makers. The recommendation comes as the European Commission is investigating China-made EVs. The result could lead to additional duties. This would be in addition to steep tariff increases the U.S. has issued on an array of Chinese goods. A top U.S. agency calling on all water facilities to bolster their cybersecurity. This comes after increased cyber attacks on water facilities across the U.S., plus arrest warrants from the International Criminal Court against both Israeli and Hamas leaders. But critics point to other leaders who haven't been indicted by the tribunal. We tapped General Robert Spalding, retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General and author of War Without Rules, for insight. General Spalding, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
Thanks. Great to be back.
Now, the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, has issued a warning of increased cyber attacks against U.S. water facilities and utilities, saying that the attacks will be more frequent and more severe. Now, why do you think the warning is coming now? What has changed, or is this just routine?
I think it's totally involved with the current Cold War we find ourselves in. And unfortunately, we've done a very poor job of hardening the infrastructure that supports all of the critical needs that our society has, whether it be water or energy or health or financial. We've just done a very, very poor job of hardening the country.
To your point, the agency is warning that about 70% of the utilities inspected last year weren't up to par in terms of preventing cyber attacks. Now, what would happen to society if we do come under attack?
I think a good example of what happens is Hurricane Katrina. 2005, I was at Whiteman Air Force Base flying the B-2. And I remember they actually took Louisiana National Guard troops out of combat in Iraq, took them to New Orleans. And when they landed there, they said, oh, my gosh, it looks like I've never left Iraq. So there's a very thin line between civil society and a complete collapse. And I think when you start to go after infrastructure, you run the risk of having some of these very, very terrible things happen in our society. And if you think about it, we're so reliant on so many of this infrastructure that hasn't been hardened. It really makes us vulnerable to these types of attacks.
The International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants against both Israeli and Hamas leaders. They're saying they committed war crimes and crimes against humanity in the war in Gaza. Gabriel Nerona, who was a former Trump State Department advisor on Iran, making a list on X, noting names like Xi Jinping, China's regime leader, who locked 1 million Uyghurs in concentration camps, and also Ali Khamenei, the dictator of Iran. Now, what do you make of the ICC's decision to go after both leaders of Hamas and Israel?
I think the Chinese Communist Party in particular has been very successful in turning the international order away from liberal ideas like democracy, free trade, human rights, civil liberties, and towards authoritarianism. And I think this is just one indication. It's not just the International Court, it's the UN Human Rights Council, it is the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. You look at each of these institutions, and they favor more kind of the China model, which is basically not what we established after the end of the Second World War. And so they have taken the existing system and they have turned it towards their favor. Rather than dismantling, they've turned it so that it supports their interests.
General Spalding, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
UK police say a man charged with spying for Hong Kong has been found dead in a park outside London. Police say they're investigating the unexplained death of Matthew Trickett. A member of the public found the man dead on Sunday. Prosecutors charged Trickett with national security offenses earlier this month. Trickett was a former Royal Marine with a private security firm. He was out on bail pending trial. The UK passed a National Security Act last year to target threats from foreign states. Britain's foreign ministry had summoned the Chinese ambassador to tell them espionage and cyber attacks were unacceptable on British soil. Britain's defense minister accuses China of preparing to provide Russia with lethal aid for use in its war against Ukraine. Grant Shapps spoke to a conference in London. He said U.S. and British intelligence had evidence that lethal aid is now or will be flowing from China to Russia and into Ukraine. Shapps said there was a 64% increase in trade between China and Russia since the start of the Ukraine war. He said the two countries are covering each other's back. Earlier this month, Russian President Vladimir Putin visited China. He and Chinese leader Xi Jinping pledged a new era of partnership and voiced their opposition to the U.S. on various issues, including Taiwan and Ukraine. Shapps said Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea had been emboldened by what he called a quarter of a century of Western timidness. If there are no discussions, there's no democracy. That's what protesters outside Taiwan's parliament were chanting Tuesday as they railed against a measure that could give lawmakers more power over the new administration. What's fueling the uproar? A Taiwanese expert weighs in.
Thousands took to the streets outside of Taiwan's parliament on Tuesday, protesting against a measure that would allow lawmakers to enforce more scrutiny over new President William Lai, his administration, and the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. Holding banners while listening to speeches, the crowd was heard chanting, "If there are no discussions, there's no democracy."
I think I must take a stand and tell lawmakers that we won't allow this to happen. You guys were elected by the people, one vote at a time, and we're here to supervise you.
The new proposal was spearheaded by the island's main opposition parties, the Kuomintang and the Taiwan People's Party. If passed, the legislature would have the power to hold officials in contempt for what it called making false statements or withholding information. But critics say the bill is being forced through parliament without consultation.
Democracy is not dead yet, but it's really in peril. After passing these reform bills, the legislative yuan will become an insurgent and dominant branch, which abuses power and encroaches the power of other branches.
The event bears a striking resemblance to the Sunflower protest a decade ago, when hundreds of students stormed the island's parliament over a trade deal with Communist China. Tuesday's demonstration came after Taiwan's new President William Lai was inaugurated. Despite his victory, Lai is contending with a divided parliament. His ruling party, the DPP, lost its majority in the legislative body. It has led Taiwan's opposition parties to join hands on mutual proposals.
Coming Friday, we will see another conflict because they are going to pass more reform bills, which some of them are very controversial.
Back to the new legislation, debate across political parties has even turned physical. Last Friday, scuffles ignited between lawmakers over the measure. Footage shows officials tackling and climbing over each other. One was seen snatching a pile of documents and sprinting out of the room. Oftentimes, the Chinese Communist Party prefers to negotiate with the Kuomintang due to it traditionally favoring cooperation with Beijing. The CCP has attempted to boost its influence in Taiwan by winning over key figures in the party. For decades, the Chinese Communist Party has seen the island as a breakaway territory and has vowed to annex it by force if necessary. That's despite never having ruled it.
Chinese citizen reporter Zhang Zhan, dressed in pajamas and with her hair cut short, sending her first message to the world after 4 years in prison in China. She was arrested after posting COVID-19 reports on both Chinese and overseas websites. Watch.
Hello everyone, I am Zhang Zhan. At 5 a.m. on May 13th, the police brought me to my brother's house in Shanghai. Thank you all for your help and concern. I hope everyone is well. I really don't know what to say.
Zhang's video was posted on the X account of an organization called Free Zhang Zhan. The organization stated Zhang said her freedom is limited. It added that she is subject to authority surveillance and harassment. The organization also said it would keep a close eye on Zhang's health and safety and voiced concerns that she could get arrested again. Zhang had reported in real time on the situation in China when COVID-19 broke out, something Beijing wanted to keep under wraps. Her report stopped in May of 2020. Later, Beijing admitted authorities had arrested her and charged her with disturbing social stability. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison. Zhang used to be a lawyer in China. Chinese authorities suspended her license after she took part in pro-democracy activities inside the country. That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 3 years. If you'd like to support us, consider donating. Find us at donorbox.org/China-in-focus or subscribe to our partner platform Epoch TV, where you can watch our full episodes. Just click the link down below. Here's what to look out for in our second half. ChatGPT or ChatCPT. China is rolling out a chatbot trained with regime leader Xi Jinping's thoughts and theories. The CEO of MacGyver Tech and Mac Nerd linking TikTok to a ransomware attack with data sent to China. He shares insight on TikTok's app collusion function, which allows it to access other apps like Messages.
Why is an app like that sending data like that to there on a constant basis? For what reasons?
And how are investors feeling about China's historic effort to stabilize its troubled property sector? A look at what the data shows. More on that after the break here on China in Focus. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you tomorrow.